Okay, welcome to the Rock Your Dream Body and Dream Life interview series. Today, we are talking to Elizabeth DiAlto. She is my own personal coach and my friend. We go way back. So just to tell you a little bit about Liz to start, or Elizabeth. Gosh, that's the thing. I always go back to.
I know. It really doesn't make a difference. I upgraded to the full name, but everyone calls me Liz still, and all my social media stuff still says Liz because it's all over the internet, so totally fine.
Yeah, I just have to reprogram my brain.
All good.
So Elizabeth is known for her raw, honest, and grounded approach to self-help and spirituality. She's the founder of Wild Soul Movement, author of Untame Yourself, and host of the popular Untame the Wild Soul Woman podcast, which I absolutely love and listen to every week. She's been a teacher, leader, speaker, coach, and trainer to groups and individuals for 13 plus years. And she also consults with organizations ranging from startups to large corporations such as Dove UK. The core belief that fuels her mission and work in the world is that women who are connected, listen to, and trust themselves above any external source experience more freedom, ease, and joy in life. Amen. This is the basis for her movement to reclaim and redefine womanhood in the 21st century. So welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Yes. And so as I've talked about in some of the other interviews, we are structuring this around the idea of rocking your dream body and breaking free from some of this self-sabotage and stuff that we do. And I think that it's so important to have these conversations around other areas besides just our health, because it's all connected. And so today I want to dive into the topic of intuition specifically and worthiness, because I think that's the thing that a lot of women really struggle with, giving themselves permission to nourish their way towards their goals and really set goals from this mindset of self-discovery and self-love. So why don't we start out by you kind of telling us a little bit about your journey to getting to this place where you are rocking your dream body and your dream life, and this whole idea of just really being in alignment with yourself.
Cool. Yeah. So I'll actually be super honest to start. I am not rocking my dream body right now. I am rocking my dream connection to my body. The dream inner experience of my soul in my body. But my physical body has actually been a struggle point for me, a little bit of a pain point for the last 2 years. Because as I've been journeying into getting to the place of alignment where I'm rocking my dream life, my physical body had to get a little out of whack during that process. So, but I say that from a place of such love and compassion for myself that I didn't used to have. Back in the day, and this is, you and I know each other from when I was a personal trainer. And so back then, and what's so interesting is I was looking in the mirror at the time of being in better shape, 20 pounds lighter and much fitter and tighter and stronger. And I still could have found things wrong with me. But if I look back at those pictures now, I'm like, damn, I was slamming. That body was amazing. So it's just so interesting, the dissatisfaction with whatever we have that so many of us are cultured and conditioned for, where it's you really don't know what you had until you don't have it anymore. I would love to be in that body now, and I would worship the hell out of that thing, even though at the time I didn't particularly appreciate it so much. So the journey was, I was doing health and fitness stuff, and at a certain point, I just was no longer satisfied with helping people work out only, because I started to notice that people could eat super well, people could train, but inevitably, if any kind of mental, emotional, or spiritual thing came up, the physical results could be wiped out so easily. So I became a lot more interested in what was going on inside. And so I shifted. I had to do a lot of my own personal work, healing, exploration, discovery, as you said, to realize the balance, the necessary balance and harmony between working out and working in. So now in my own business, I focus much, much, much more on the working in. And that's why I know you want to talk about intuition and stuff like that. And we'll certainly get to that. But I had to do a lot of deconstructing, deprogramming, and reconditioning of habits, behaviors, belief systems, and a lot of it centers around my own relationship to myself, how my thoughts are, how I treat and react to my feelings, and what's my relationship to the external world versus my internal world.
Yeah. And I think that's so important to note, because I think that like a lot of women find me after they've been chasing that number on the scale for a really long time, or fitting into those skinny jeans. And I can speak from my own experience, much like you said here, that like there's never that point where you get to that number or that place where you finally feel like, oh, I'm finally there.
That's right.
It's like you always set a new goal. And a lot of times when you set it from that mindset of not good enoughness, or like I'm not there until I look this way or weigh this much, then it's almost like even when you get there, you find new things to be really critical about related to your body. So it's like shifting that mindset and going through periods like you just said, where you kind of just let yourself release that whole need to have that focus on a physical result for a little while, so that you can sort of get yourself realigned, is so important. And that's one of the things that a lot of my clients, when they come to me, they think that they're off track because they're in that spot that you're at. Whereas right now, it's something that you're fully embracing as this time to really focus on really connecting with that intuition. And so what was the first step for you in starting, like once you started realizing, okay, I need to shift how I'm coming at this, how do I get in touch with my intuition?
So a couple of years ago, and you had spent time with me and my ex-boyfriend, a lot of it started when I quit personal training. And I was still doing fitness stuff online, but I just really started to notice I could barely even force myself to create like YouTube fitness videos anymore, because I just didn't care. I was so much more interested in studying and getting into like subtle body stuff. So I started studying and learning how to do Reiki, which is a form of energy healing that works with the chakra system and balancing the energy of the body. And once I started doing that, I started to really realize how much of an empath I've always been in my life. Very sensitive to other people's feelings and emotions. And I am quite intuitive. I just started noticing, it's interesting. It's like once you agree to be interested in this and curious, life will go, okay, cool. Here's a resource. Oh, all right, here, read that book, do that thing. And so it's like, once I said yes to that path, I was never without the next like resource or like crumb to follow, right? So some of the books that I started to read or listen to were Caroline Myss' Anatomy of the Spirit. That's how I really learned or started to learn about like the chakra system. And what was also cool about that, for me being raised Catholic, she corresponds the chakras with like the 7 sacraments, and she talks about the Kabbalah. So I actually went on a really interesting, that I think I still will always be on for my whole life, exploration of and curiosity and understanding of spirituality. I really started to get into, after getting some feedback from people that I was like very masculine or like tough or strong or intense or whatever, discovering and exploring my femininity. So I started reading Sally Kempton's Awakening Shakti, and all of a sudden realizing, for all the years that I had judged myself for being too masculine, that it wasn't that I was too masculine. It was that I didn't understand my own unique expression of femininity. Mm-hmm. And through the study of archetypes, I rave about archetypes. So Caroline Myss has another book that I'm actually reading right now called Sacred Contract, where she goes really in depth around archetypes. But Awakening Shakti uses the goddesses of yoga to go through feminine archetypes. There's another book by Jean Shinoda Bolen called Goddesses in Every Woman, where she primarily uses like the Greek and Roman goddesses. And those are just energies. It's not like you have to believe in a new religion or anything like that. It's literally just understanding the different expressions of feminine energy that I was finally able to go, oh, I've always been feminine. I just didn't understand, because in the context of our culture, femininity, the 2 archetypes that get really honored are like maiden and mother. Mm. And if you don't identify with that, or don't particularly feel like you embody that, you kind of feel like left out. And it's like, okay, I guess I'll just act like a dude. Because we learn that in schooling or religion or whatever, to like follow the lines, follow the rules, fit into this mold or whatever. So once I started to just realize, it was like I had this tunnel vision of what femininity was. I thought it was just like being prissy and girly.
Mm-hmm.
And then I opened my vision to go, oh my God, and realized how my emotions were like magical information being sent from my divine self to go, hey, pay attention to this thing. This is important, right? Or like my senses, my sensuality, the unique language of my body's senses, the way my body communicates my intuition with me. I just started to be able to notice that and see what was coming up. So if I had to sum up the tangent I just went on, I would say I got curious. I opened myself up for resources to come. I paid attention to like the themes that were coming up, and I started studying those archetypes and realizing how feminine energy expressed through me and how my body spoke my intuition to me through my senses. Does that all make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Cool. Because I think that a lot of women are in that spot where they're so operating in their masculine, because we've gotten so conditioned and there's so much praise around that, this idea of wearing, that go sort of as a badge of honor, that we get so disconnected from our femininity. And that's where that receptive mode, which allows that inner guidance to come through. So it's almost like finding that balance between masculine and feminine again, so that you're opening up that channel to receive that information.
Yeah. And something I say all the time, which clicks pretty easily for people, is get out of your head and into your body. Mm-hmm. Because that's like headspace, thoughts, like the left brain, like the thinking, the rationale, the pros and cons list, like that type of stuff, that is very masculine. And then, but when you drop down into your heart or your belly, because some people connect with their intuition differently. Some people really feel heart pulls and some people really feel like gut pulls. Then you get to harmonize, right? Like you were saying, balance. I like to think of it as like harmony, because depending on what's going on, the other thing about being a woman is that we are cyclical by nature. Nature is cyclical, right? There's like the medicine wheel, the seasons, right? And because as women, like we're an extension of Mother Nature, as you start to notice these things about yourself, you'll notice how during different seasons of the year, you do actually feel differently. Like it might be, you might feel more inner and like dark in the winter, because like that's what that season is. You might feel light and energetic and like refreshed and new during the spring. You might be in like a creative, like very like fiery, passionate mode during the summer. Because those are like, you might feel like you're shedding skin and like going through some stuff in the fall, because that's kind of like the energy of the season, right? Mm-hmm. Or for people who follow the moon cycles, like the full moon or the new moon, and then your own personal menstrual cycle, like there's a lot of other energies at play aside from just like what's going on in our own life. Mm-hmm. And I don't share all of that to confuse people and give you too much to think about. I share all of it so anyone listening or watching can go, oh, that sounds interesting to me. Let me look into that. So whatever feels the most compelling to you, that's a great place to start. You can't mess up.
And to have more compassion for yourself so that you can lean into those cycles, like the cycles of the month. Certain times of the month you have more energy, certain times you don't. And that's okay. It's not like you have to be forcing all of the time, or in that like, not forcing that you ever really want to force, but in that go sort of mode.
Yeah.
So I know getting into your body, out of your head into your body is your specialty. So how would you suggest that people start doing that? Because a lot of times we're like, okay, even me, I just said this to you last week. Like, I get that I want to get out of my head, but sometimes I forget exactly how to do that. So
do you remember what I said to you? What's step number one?
To listen. Well, you said to listen to music. You said to meditate and to focus on, really breathing and those types of sensual, more sensual things.
And that's the thing, breathe. Step number one is breathe. People what's so interesting is we live in such an advanced technological age right now that we almost have an expectation that for anything to be effective, it needs to be intricate or complicated. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people are suffering or failing or struggling or whatever, because they forget, take care of the basics. Start with the very basics. Take 3 deep breaths. That's it. You want to connect to your body, pause, take 3 deep breaths, like literally all the way down into your belly, like literally do it now, right? Just like, I mean, even after just 1, you already feel calmer and more dropped in. 2, and you're like, oh, thank God, my body is there, right? And then 3, you're like, all right. And if you're even just 1% more dropped in than before you took those 3 breaths, that's good enough.
Yeah.
We talk about this a lot. You're my mentorship. We talk about this on the calls all the time. It's not about going from 0 to 90 miles an hour. 0 to 3 miles an hour is great because you have to get to 3 before you can get to 5, 10, 20, 60, 80, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like those small little incremental steps. So to get out of your head and into your body, first thing I would say is breathe. And to even add another dimension. So I use sensuality because for me, it's one of the most universal languages for people to be present. Because if you turn your awareness to your senses, boom, you're already in your body. Right? So it's like, what do you feel? So when I say, when you inhale, it's like imagining those in-breaths massaging your insides. When you exhale, imagine exhaling anything that's in the way of your connection to your body or to yourself. When you exhale, imagine that the exhale is coming out the bottom of your feet. That's going to help you ground, and that's literally going to help you bring the energy down from in your head all the way down and through to your body. And then from there, like we were saying for you, you can layer on the senses. So if you're trying to get into meditation and you're super distracted, find some mantras, like put on a song. It doesn't even have to be a mantra, but like find a song where you can like pay attention to the rhythm and the beat, and you can maybe sync up your breath with the music or with the beat or with the rhythm, right? Or maybe it's go outside so you can actually be in nature, and you could be connecting with, here in the Northern Hemisphere, in the Western world, it's springtime and there's freaking flowers and blooms and amazing smells everywhere. I live near the beach. It's like go near the ocean, hear the waves crashing, feel the energy of the ocean, feel the breeze on your face, like engage your freaking senses, right? And maybe you can't go out. Maybe you're in a cold place. All right, light some incense or light a candle or get some twinkly sparkling lights. My friend Terry Cole talks about like creating your Zen den in your own house. Like put up some twinkly lights, get a meditation pillow that you love the color of it or something, or it's super cozy, or get a blanket, light some incense or some essential oils, and there you go, right? It's just like Martha Beck calls it sense drenching. Just engage as many of your senses as you can as possible and take a couple of deep breaths, and that's an amazing place to start.
Yeah, I think for me, music is one of those things where it can totally change your vibe so quickly. And it does get me out of my head, like just moving in my body, just like giving yourself that permission to have like a 5-minute dance party is so empowering. And then you're present, like you're there, you're like, boom, I'm on.
Yeah.
And those are the types of things that people can do. They can start implementing that kind of stuff into like regular everyday schedules that, like maybe a woman has a super busy schedule. Maybe she's working, she's a mom, and all of this stuff that she's, trying to manage and keep up with, but she has this sort of desire to get back connected to herself. And these are sort of like those actionable steps that she can take.
And it doesn't have to take a lot of time. Like what's the length of a song? 3 to 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So changing gears a little bit. So when we're on this path of like really trying to, or have that desire to connect with ourselves and be better about self-care and self-love, I think a lot of times women hold themselves to this standard that's almost so high that like even Superwoman herself couldn't reach it, but we think that we should be able to match that. So what advice do you have for women who it's like they're trying, they want to make their health a priority, but they feel like they fail or they make mistakes along the way? Like, how do you start being more nurturing to yourself and more at ease about it?
So, in my book, I call this the Sacred 7, but I'll just give you a little overview. If you want to go more in depth, you could check out the book. But basically, take an inventory of your life. Just take a look at what are the most important categories of your life. And if you want to keep it simple, just do the top 4, which are usually health, wealth, relationships, and spirituality. And just ask yourself the question, which one of those categories has the power right now, if you address it, to either, is it currently either dragging down all the rest of them? Like, so for example, if someone hates their job, that's probably affecting every area of their life because they have to spend so much time at their job and they're so dissatisfied, and it's just like funkifying their energy across the board, right? It's trickling into other things. Or if something's not like glaringly dragging everything else down, which category has the power, if addressed or if it was going better, could totally elevate all the other experiences? Does that make sense? That is a great place to go, okay, if I only have a limited amount of time, what's going to be the most efficient and effective use of my time? So answer that question. What could pull everything up, or what's currently dragging everything down, and start there.
Yeah. And when they're looking for guidance on these types of things, I think a lot of times we look to experts or we Google like everything, you know, and we're constantly searching for those answers outside of ourselves, when in reality, a lot of times, like those experts that we sort of put on a pedestal, they're not even perfect themselves. They're still on their own journey. And B, a lot of times we forget to like use that filter of that inner guidance to check in and be like, is this the right thing for me? So like when we're going through and deciphering these things or filtering, how, you know, you talked about your intuition getting into your body and being present and breathing. But in terms of like deciding like to use that inner expert, how do you know? Like, how do you know the answer?
Yeah.
Like what direction to go with things?
Yeah. So this is cool. In the link that we give people, which will be untameyourself.com/Sheila, I will include my yes, no truth practice. Because if you, at the very, very basic level, if you just know in your body what feels like a yes, what feels like a no, and what feels like truth, that could easily guide you in and out of everything you need to navigate in your life, right? And the reason why I can't just be like, oh, it's this, this, and this, is because it will require some personal exploration and some trial and error, because my body's signals might not be the same as your body's signals. So for me, truth always registers as chills or goosebumps. Like when I get chills or goosebumps, usually that's my signal, like pay attention. Something important is happening, or that was true, or like, ooh, ask another question about that thing. When I'm reading or listening to something or whatever, and all of a sudden I get super overwhelmed with emotion and I'm like crying uncontrollably, and it seems like it's out of nowhere and doesn't make any sense, that's always a huge sign for me that I have to stop, drop, and pay attention to whatever is that thing. Across the board, though, in general, a yes will often feel expansive, or there will be some opening or calming quality to it. And a no will usually feel more contracting, maybe painful. There will be like a closing off, a stiffening. There might even be physical pain. And the other thing to notice is what you feel and where you feel it. And so again, there's like some different layers to it. So we'll give people like a video practice so they could explore it. Because once you know those things and you start to know what your signals are, it's very easy. Well, it's simple, not easy.
Yeah.
It's simple to know the answer, but then what actually takes a little bit more something is the trust in yourself to actually listen to those things and not go back up into your head and talk yourself or logic yourself out of it once the body has spoken. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's so interesting, the signals that we do get from our body. Like our body is giving us those signals all day long.
All day long.
Yeah. And yet so often we just ignore it, or we keep going or whatever. And I even thinking back, like I know for me, my signal is like, it comes from like the message comes from this area, like my heart chakra, like my center, when it's like, no, you have to, that's like, go that way. You know, you've got to do this, versus something that's up here is just like a worry, an ego thing, something else that's not necessarily coming from that truth core part of me.
Yeah.
And also like just weird things. Like I remember when I was going through my divorce, my throat hurt. Like when I was trying to speak and I was trying to talk through things that were happening, it was like, I think I was finally using my voice in a way that I hadn't before. And so it's like, you don't notice that. You're just like, oh, I have a sore throat, or, oh, I might be getting sick. Or even if your body does start getting sick, sometimes that means slow down, and people ignore that. So I think that just paying attention and having that awareness is really the first step. Would you agree?
I would totally agree. And also just understand, sometimes when you go to check in for like a yes, no, or a truth, you don't actually really get an answer. And to me, that just means not right now. Just chill out, let it ride. You don't need to know right now. Come back to it later. And even like what you're saying, it is possible to then want to overanalyze and put meaning on everything. So one of the things that I wish to share with people as they're starting down this path is, unless a signal is so super obvious and very clear, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
There's no need to dig. Like the stuff that wants to be handled in your life, the communication that's valuable and important from your intuition will be clear. It will be obvious if you can just quiet your head enough to be in your body about it. And for some people, another really easy thing to do is like just put a hand on your heart, put a hand on your belly, stay connected, and also close the circuit, the energetic loop of your body. If you're connected to yourself, literally, physically, that can really, really help. But you got to play with it. You might not know right away. Or once you start playing with it, you might notice, oh my God, I've been getting signals my whole life and I've been freaking ignoring them. But something I always like to offer, something I say, you've heard me say this probably a million times at this point on our mentorship calls, is that confidence comes from evidence. And so it's helpful to just think back on times, two different scenarios. When you had a gut feeling or you had an intuitive hit and you didn't listen to it and you kicked yourself for it later because you talked yourself out of your intuition and you knew better. Like deep soul knew better. And then think of times when you went with your gut and it worked out amazingly. And the thing is, this amazing doesn't always mean it felt good and it was like rainbows and butterflies and you made all this money or whatever. Sometimes amazingly means it took you down the path with all the lessons you needed.
Yes.
They might have been really uncomfortable. Like, so for example, you're divorced. You could look at that and go, oh, I made a mistake. I married the wrong man. Or you can go, that was the exactly perfect thing I needed took me from where I was at that time when that started to exactly where I needed to be when that ended, and to move into the next phase of my life. It was a cycle. Right?
And we're always looking to make the perfect decision or the right decision. And I think that sometimes giving ourselves permission to see the forward progress in everything that we do, then that opens us up again to be able to receive that guidance towards how it is, every decision is ultimately leading us towards that dream life, that ideal, that core version, true part of ourselves. But a lot of times we can't see it because we put all of these limitations or expectations on everything.
Yeah. And the thing is this, every decision is the right decision.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a wrong decision. If you made it, it was right.
Yeah.
And it took you exactly where you needed to be. Again, it might've been uncomfortable. It might've led to some pain, but like, there's always lessons. Like there's always amazing, amazing stuff. And so if you view your life, if you experience your life as a victim of the circumstances, you will believe in mistakes and you will beat yourself up and you will think you messed up. But if you are just always in that curious place, knowing that it's like an ongoing, there is no actual destination, to just, my friend John Vroman says this, just be obsessed with the journey and the process. You get to go, man, I got my ass kicked in that decision, but look at what it led to.
Yes. That's huge. That idea of letting go of the victim mindset.
Yeah.
That's another thing that I think we're programmed into, is like explaining and blaming and not allowing ourselves to see the lesson that is actually a gift.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you were to look back on your life and really look at something that maybe you felt shame or guilt or something like that around, how have you found compassion for yourself in something that, on paper or at first might have felt like a bad decision?
Totally. I love to forgive myself for all the things I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I look back at anything that like caused me pain or strife or was embarrassing or I was ashamed about, there was a reason for that. Like there was an insecurity I was coming from. I wasn't coming from this place of being connected to myself in alignment and in integrity and self-love.
Yeah.
Anything that produced shame, embarrassment, guilt, or whatever, I created those experiences because I was coming from insecurity, lack of confidence, self-doubt. I was making decisions from a place of fear or lack, or looking for external validation instead of getting all of my validation from within. And so all I can really do is like forgive my younger self and be like, hey, thanks for the lessons. Love you.
Yeah. I love how Abraham Hicks says that our emotions are just an indicator, and
Totally.
it's not necessarily that is true, that you should be shameful or feel guilty, but that core true version of yourself, that heart-centered version of yourself doesn't actually believe those things, and that's why they feel so bad.
Yeah.
When you get into that mode of like, oh, that's right, I am connected to this higher power, I am more than this human being walking around just trying to do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you realize that spiritual part of yourself, you're like, oh, I get it. That's because that spiritual part of me doesn't believe that I should feel guilty around this.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, you realize that you do not have to identify yourself with those things.
Yes.
They were all just choices. It was an accumulation of choices. So it was a poor choice, or it was a painful choice, or a choice that led to whatever experience. But like, you are not that thing. You are not your mistakes. You're not bad. You're not stupid. You're not wrong. You're not inadequate. You were just who you were at that time. You were the person who made that choice that led to that thing. And now you're different. And it's great.
And how freeing would that be if we all just gave ourselves permission to live life without shame or without any of those, like staying in those negative emotions? I mean, we have this full range, but if we just were like, oh, okay, and move along, which I feel like, and you are someone who I think, and you tell me, is very good at that. Like you're good at releasing attachment to what other people think, or, that particular decision at that particular time, you just move on. And is that something you believe that you have sort of developed over time, or were you sort of just like naturally that way since as far back as you know?
My mom will tell you I've been like that since I was like 2. Except it's not entirely true. I really, for the most part, have always been wired to not really care what other people think. Except as I got older, I noticed you do care what like the people in your innermost circle that you care about and love the most think, like your romantic partner or your family, right? A lot of people are making choices because they want to please those people.
Yes.
Or because they want to prove something to those people. Or even like your mentors, guides, or teachers. Like even for years where I wasn't super like aligned in my business yet, and I wasn't super successful yet, it's because I wanted to make my teachers proud. Like I wanted to follow the formula and make it work, but the formula wasn't working for me because it wasn't super aligned with like how it's more natural or congruent for me to do things. And so, but here's what I realized more than anything, and this is in whatever context you want to put it in. Our emotions are there to be felt. And emotions only last like 90 seconds. So anything beyond that, it's because we are spinning drama, telling a story about it, making it mean something. We are just blowing it out of proportion and putting so much energy on it. We make it last. So if you could just allow yourself, because so many of us have been taught at some point or another that it's not okay to feel or express our emotions. Oh, you're too much. Be quiet. Don't cry. Don't be dramatic. Right?
Yeah.
Big girls don't cry, or, don't be crazy. Like for women, the things we least want to be labeled are like crazy, high maintenance, or bitchy.
Yes.
And we often associate that with expression of our emotion. Mm-hmm. But if you could just find a safe way or environment or people who support you to feel your emotions and process them. Maybe it's your journal. Maybe it is dancing it out. Maybe it's a song. Maybe it's having a coach or a mentor or a safe space like we have in our mentorship. People can come in and dump anything in there and it's okay. And then it gets out. But when you stuff that stuff and let it build is when it becomes problematic. So if you just allow yourself to feel the thing and then let it pass, it doesn't have to have that much control over you or that much influence on you as when you hold on to it, stuff it, bury it, avoid it, put it in a compartment and pretend it's not happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or cycle in it by getting into that mode of it being a part of your story or being the victim. Like processing it is different than repeating it over and over and over again. There's like
totally. And there might be layers, right? Like you might go, okay, cool. Got that layer out of the way. Mm-hmm. And then when it comes back, you have two choices. You could beat yourself up and be like, oh, I thought I took care of this already. Or you could be like, oh, cool. Here's the next layer. Boom. That one's gone. It'll be even easier next time.
Yeah.
And we talked about this, I don't know, a month or two ago in our mentorship around literally just sticking to the facts of things, right? Like if we could just pull ourselves out of the own drama we've created and look at the facts of a situation and go, okay, where have I completely amplified or made way more meaning than necessary, or like spun a story, or like literally projected my own mental movie into the future of this thing that hasn't even really happened. Like what's real? What has actually happened? What are the facts of the situation? Then we could really, be way more clean with how we experience things and true and honest, right? Without making stuff up all the time. Because we do, like, humans are meaning-making machines. We're wired for it. So that's kind of like the shadow side of imagination.
Yes. And that's really, kind of coming full circle back to this idea of being present and being connected to our intuition right now. I think a big piece of the reason why we're not connected to it is because we're so focused on thinking about the future or the past that we're not here. And when we get here, then none of that stuff really matters because we're here. And this is the moment that we have right now to use to our greatest benefit.
Yeah. That's why they make these watches now that don't have any arms on them. They just say now.
Yeah. I love that.
So when people look down, it's like, oh, what time is it now?
It's so true. And we can get so caught up in all of these sort of things that just really aren't relevant or important. And they're really holding us back from living our best life right now.
Yeah. And it's, some of us are just like gluttons for complexity.
Yeah.
So the more we could just strip away and keep it simple, 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 and true, God, life is really amazing. Mm-hmm. It's just like so, so, so amazing.
Yes. And so is our body. Like this is a miracle machine we're walking around in.
Miracle machine. So what's cool now, being in this place, I just joined, there's a new Equinox that opened up right near me, like 10 minutes away, only this month. It's only been open for a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my God, this is what I've been waiting for, because I need some consistency in my life. I need something to compel me to show up and work on my physical body now. Cause like I love working on the internals, right? And I can get all up in there and spend time with my soul all day. But then, I got 20 pounds that don't need to be on my body. And so I didn't need to beat myself up about it. I was in a bar class this morning and I was shocked at how hard it was for me. It was like coming face to face with the reality of how out of shape I actually am, in terms of like my endurance, my stamina, my strength, like all these things that used to be like my balance. I used to be a freaking personal trainer. I am not physically fit right now. I'm just not. I'm still strong, but not super fit. And what I noticed that I was so appreciative for was the voice running in my head was going, all right, girl, like this is where you are right now. You can do this. This is point A. Just keep breathing. You got this. Like we can freaking do this. Take a break if you need it. Like we are in it. We got this. Yeah. And instead of like, you piece of shit, you know what I mean? Like there was no beating myself up. There was a little bit of shock. I was like, damn, okay, this is where I am. And this is not where I'm going to be forever. This is temporary. Just keep coming back. Keep showing up. You got this. And that was my inner voice. And I felt so proud in that moment. But it took a lot of work to get there.
Yeah. And what a gift to now be able to come back at this and nourish your way towards your goals and have this sort of self-discovery, self-love type of approach versus where you've ever approached it in the past. It's like, wow, how cool is it that I get to up level and now reapproach this with this mindset.
Yeah.
And feel how good it is to be in this empowered state about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love, and you've said this 2 times now, and I love the way you're articulating it. Nourish your way to your goals.
Yeah.
That feels so good.
Yes. That's what I'm all about. And it makes it so much more fun that way.
Hell yeah. 'Cause why not? You can either have a treacherous experience or you can at least enjoy the hell out of the ride.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, awesome. This was so much fun. And I feel like we could talk for another hour or two. Yeah. So if people want to find out more about you or they want to take this further, I know you mentioned the link already, but do you want to go ahead and give it again?
Yeah. So go to untameyourself.com/Sheila. So I'll just put some resources, a lot of things we talked about today. I have podcast episodes, a couple of videos and practices and stuff to help you actually implement it and do it. So you're not like great. Thanks for the tips. What do I do now? I'll give you some of the what and how. But then also, if these are conversations, you have more questions, or you want to continue the conversation, the best place to do that is I have this free Facebook group. So just go to untameyourself.com/Facebook. That's a great way to just like connect with women who are also, untaming themselves, connecting to their true selves. We swap a lot of resources in there and stuff like that all the time. So those are probably the two best ways to do that.
Yes. And I will say, like, on this journey, that is the best way, is to just like stay focused and keep yourself committed to it by surrounding yourself with other people, women especially, that are on the same journey. So
yeah,
that's awesome. All right. Well, thank you again. And
thank you.
I will see everybody else on the next interview.
Bye.
Take care.